right? We've used this word like, oh, that group is underrepresented on stage, but really, is it really underrepresentation, or is it that they've been excluded from things? So there's a shift there that's happening. And then often I hear when people are talking about, or even say advertising for their shows, like, this is a universal story of love, or this is a universal story for family. That idea is also shifting because it's like universal for who? So if it's like a Cinderella love story, right, that may be universal for cis hetero people, but not for anyone who's genderqueer, right? So again, it's just like rethinking. I also want to say that better is better. So even if you make one tiny little shift, even if you're like, whatever it is, that even just being here, having this conversation, I think we're all better because we're having it. My having to put this thing together has made me better because it's opened my mind up to more things that are happening all over the place. So better is better. Any rethinking is good. Questions about this idea? There are more things in your Google folder. There's an entire document that I've called it like definition resource document that has a whole thing for thinking about the global majority in terms about that, and a whole thing for the queer community, and like what is a neo-pronoun and all that stuff. So you'll have all those specifics in there as well.
You can have the you can access.
Yeah, it'll have everything on it. It'll have all of this plus some other resources. All right, rituals. We did talk a little tiny bit about that, but I just want to say we are good at this. We are good at the rituals. We gather in circles at the beginning. We gather again at the end. We are good at this. And now this is showing up in so many places, like trauma-informed pedagogy and other places. So, because especially this next year, all coming back together, even if you have been together, this whole pandemic has really thrown a lot of people, a lot of families into a loop. We really need to consider what rituals we can have. So do you have an opening and closing ritual? I have a ritual for seniors graduating. What other rituals do you have? Let's share some of these rituals, because we might not all be doing your thing, and you might have something that's great that we want to copy and take. Yes?
Sorry, I just want to ask, why are they so good?
So it's like this, like structuring your day. So if you are having a bad day, right, being able to take that moment to do something that is habit, that doesn't necessarily have a lot of emotions attached to it. Like we're doing a physical warm-up, or you always know you're going to come in and do a check-in. But when these things become habit, it allows your kind of emotional and which is also connected to your physical body, kind of regulate. So it's about like regulating your day.
So we're saying the rituals are a good thing.
Yeah, we're saying we love them.
Okay, so what are we doing that we feel like is working?
Yeah.
Maybe give an example, and I just jumped in, but so my son is going to your camp, and my son he's sitting outside. Oh no, Zach took him home, but he has like severe separation anxiety, and has for forever and ever. And you see him like crying in the morning, but he's like, I just want to do the song, and like just as you were saying that, I'm like, oh, the song is the thing that he's able to root in, and you have this song, and then he's like, I just can sing the song. At the end of the song, you can go, and I see like what you're saying is like he needs to do that thing.
Yeah.
And
So
you can feel like it's.
So yeah, we have for I run a camp at the U, and whether we have 300 kids there or right now only about 60 kids there, the day is broken up just like a regular school schedule, right? But we have certain rituals. We always end the day with a song and a chant. We always start the day with me doing morning announcements and greeting everybody, even if there are no announcements to be had, even if I have nothing really to say, I'm greeting everybody, and then we do a warm-up, a physical warm-up before we start. So these things do become part of like the culture of that group. So how are you building that in your spaces?
This one thing's really simple, like do contacts I teach elementary. First thing I do when I see them, when they come into my class is show me your cross hours today, up, down, sideways, diagonal. So quick assessment for you to see how they're doing it.
Do you do that at the door or after they come in?
After they come in, they sat down, and then I make sure that they see that I see what they're doing, so that they know that I care.
Great. Anybody else have, like maybe you play the same game every time they come in, or, yeah.
I teach Jennifer neighbor, so here is her work. I teach my kids the container building and permission slips, and so that's something that we built in the beginning of every rehearsal. And
Can you explain a little bit more about that?
yeah, so permission slips is a chance basically for them to set an intention for the day, and I really focus on letting go of what happened in your other classes or what you have to deal with later. Right now, this is the only thing you can deal with, so you get a chance to check out everything else and just enjoy the process of theater. And then to write themselves a permission slip. At the beginning of the year, I always have sticky notes on hand. I mean, maybe it's to give themselves permission to actually engage 100%, or maybe it's permission to have fun and to not be stressed, or whatever that is. We spend a lot of time when we do, especially in my dance classes, retreat and things like that, to talk about what is container building and what are permission slips, and then we do that throughout the rest of the year. So check out Renee Brown if you need to know a little bit
Yeah,
more
that's
about
awesome. Thank you.
We do a musical theater warm-up every day in class, so when the bell rings, whatever song we're working on, the minute it goes on, they're like, and they're ready. They know exactly the class has started, and that's what we do. And then we do 2 a turn, so they know that something new is coming or whatever, but they know right when they walk into class, the music starts, they're in it. So
And you're talking all choreography or just
all
singing?
choreography.
Yeah.
So I teach a little choreography every day, but so we start out teaching, and then they know that, so the music starts, they do the choreography, it stops, I add on more, and then we keep adding on until the end of the term where they have to pass it off, they have to watch it, we film it, we watch it, we evaluate it, and move on to the next one. So they do that the entire year. So that's something that I think brings them comfort, because they all, like when they have downtime and all the classes are together, sometimes I'll just see them out in the parking lot and they're all out there dancing and doing whatever. But it's something that I think just brings them comfort and going, that's my ritual, that's what we're going to do in class, and it's fun for them.
Yeah, I love that. I love the ritual that like that builds, you know. Cool. Anybody else?
I have a warm-up.
Yeah.
I don't even know if Josh Lissy says this, but the number of times I've heard the sentence come out of his mouth, go grab your notebooks and come get notes. Like, Michaela could be like, yeah, I've heard that for 67 million times. Of like, that's like every single time we finish a run, that's just what we say to the kids, go grab your notebooks. And they know, they grab their notebooks, they grab something to write with, they make sure their electronics are all the way away, and they come and they sit down in front of the stage and we give them notes.
Right, so even a student who's never done a show before would be able to tell because everybody else would be doing
Yeah.
it. They would need not be told. They can just kind of observe and go, that's like.
Well, and it's also a ritual, like with our Shakespeare team, Josh buys notebooks for all the new members on the team every single year.
Oh yeah, that's
So
fun.
like
That's
your first
special.
year on the team, you get a notebook, and then that's like your Shakespeare notebook for the next couple of years.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
so it really is like a big ritual
To get your
for
notebook.
any Hillcrest production of like, we get your notebook.
Yeah, see, that's powerful. It's simple and yet that ends up having a lot of meaning. Yes.
Something that our school started that I've been implementing in my classroom is they do meditation Monday with selected classes, but they do it during first grade, which is my effect. So unfortunately, we couldn't do that. So what I like to do with my kids, especially my kids it's their first time in a drama class performing, who get especially anxious thinking about performing in front of people. So we do a meditation, so they all are getting used to it now. They start calling me the yoga teacher. We find this little spot in the room, and I just find a 5-minute meditation on YouTube. They just lay down and you just get rid of everything. And if I have kids that don't feel comfortable doing it, I just tell them to take out your script or monologue, whatever it is you're working on, and just read through that for the 5 minutes while everyone else is kind of calms down. And then usually we're pretty ready, set to go to actually perform. And yeah, I think it's worked.
Yeah, I like to do with rehearsals or with I'm doing stuff after school with kids. So once a month, do a show and tell. I loved doing show and tell when I was a kid. So we will do like show and tell, like your favorite musical or something that has to do with the show that we're working on. Like show and tell, bring a food. You're going to present not a real food, but a food that you might eat if you were in this play, or show and tell something else. Because I kind of love that. I love show and tell as a kid. I couldn't wait to bring.
Can I ask a question? I think it's kind of related to what Josh asked, is that I see that being out of the theater classroom and like working in a larger school, and you said the trauma-informed pedagogy, like working like with restorative justice circles and those types of things, like at first it's like, oh, restorative justice circles, what's that? And then I'm like, oh, I know all this, it's just what theater teachers
It's just a theater.
So I just wonder, like, and you kind of know the like larger scale of like, I feel like people are kind of catching on and catching up to what have been doing for decades. And I don't know if you can speak to that or a little bit, but like we always come in a circle. We always sit in a circle. We always go around and share or like pass the energy and those kinds of things. We've done that forever. I don't know if like, am I on that right path or am I seeing, or what are you seeing?
No, I
in that
agree. It's
regard?
the same thing when there was the whole like SEL, social emotional learning. It's like this is what we can teach this. Every high school has an expert in their school already. Why are we this is how we learn to teach. So we may not have the same vocabulary.
Right.
But
Right.
it's totally
Right, because they'll call it something different, but I'm like, yeah, I know.
That's exactly what
Those are how we share.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, we just need to keep doing this because this is coming. And they're because they're coming from the sciences, right? They're testing all these things. Now they're saying we have the data to back up that what you've been doing in drama class has been awesome all along.
But that just might be like the dialogue for your administration and for your coaches in your school to be like, come into my room and see what I've been doing and what I do and support for the arts as well.
A phrase that I have used for years and years, and instead of like what's working and what's not working, I always start out anytime we're doing any kind of evaluation process with what did you notice? What did you notice? Because then it is a little bit more inclusive in terms of we're not just looking for the nitpicky things or what's not working. It gives them a chance to also connect the dots beyond just the theater pedagogy and everything else.
Yeah.
So we always have the what did you notice? And then before I release them, I try to say what's next. If we're going to take this to the next level or we're going to level up, then what's our next step? And it helps them be more engaged in their own evaluation process, so it's not as didactic coming from the director.
And maybe also you're giving them language that makes more sense to you too, right?
Right,
So
and they're learning to be more intrinsically motivated rather than extrinsically motivated. Like how do we make teachers feel happy in this process? It allows them to bring more of themselves to the process.
Yeah, that's great. Let's talk a little bit about representation. I'm sure most of you have heard of the Bechtel test, created by Alison Bechtel and a friend of hers, last name Wallace, his first name I don't know. But the Bechtel test has to do with the three questions there. If you watch a movie or a play, does it have at least two women in it? Do they talk to each other? And do they talk to each other about something other than a man? And I would say that the Hallmark Channel, although I love it, does not pass the Bechtel test. And you would be surprised at how much doesn't pass the Bechtel test. Two women talking about something other than a man. It's very difficult. There's another test called the Vito Russo test, which I didn't know about until recently, which is talking specifically about queer characters. A film contains a character that is identifiably lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. That character must not be solely or predominantly defined by their sexual orientation or gender. They just have to be a character. So they are made up of the same sort of unique character traits commonly used to differentiate straight characters from one another. And then the third thing on that test is the character must be tied into the plot in such a way that if you remove that character, it would have a big effect on the plot. It would change the story so that their being there is important. The character matters. So those are interesting things to think about. And then some other thoughts dealing with representation. So there are kind of 4 ways to look at how characters are being represented on stage. Is a character centered? Are they a side character? Are they in the background? Are they a token character? And I would say the only one that is not okay is the tokenized character. The rest are great. And sometimes, even if you're doing Oklahoma, that you can figure out how to include representation by making sure that those background characters are also fleshed out, like we do when we're talking about, all the people in the story and all of your chorus members, your ensemble members. So centered means that the story is about that person. A side character is someone who's like the Russo test is important. You couldn't really do the story without them. A background character doesn't have any lines. They're in the background. But there are lots of ways to add representation that way. Because there's nothing that says that they can't be whatever they want to be within the world that you've created. So that's one way to kind of start thinking about increasing representation. Another thing to think about is, are your students who are BIPOC of the global majority playing the villains, playing the help, or playing the oddity somehow? Are they the odd people out? Oftentimes, and even in my program, I may only have, I have 10% or less students of color in a production or in class. And so, how can I center them? How can I have them be Cinderella and not the evil queen? Right? How can I switch things up in order to bring better representation? Or are the female characters in yet another musical falling all over themselves for the boy, screaming and tripping over themselves for the man? Is there a way to even re-look at that? Challenge that assumption and change it without even changing the lines? Is there a way to kind of deliver some of those lines differently so that they tell a new story? The next thing I have there are, sorry, question? Comment? Our community experts. I'm a part of a Facebook group of theater artists of color here in our state. And I just sent them a Google form to fill out for me. That's like, would you like to do, what is it that you do? What in theater are you good at? Are you a line designer? Are you a choreographer? Do you want to be available to be a guest artist in a class? Can you offer a master class? So that for those of us who may be in a position where we don't have people of color around that other students can see, that you might be able to bring someone in for an hour, or you might be able to hire a choreographer or hire an intimacy coordinator or fight choreographer that is someone that is BIPOC. So I'm putting this list together for you. You'll be the first ones to get the list because you're here. And I will put that in my Google folder. And it'll just be a whole spreadsheet of people that you can call with their number and their email and who they are. It'll also specify their pronouns, their ethnicity and race, so all of that, so that we can, because a lot of these actors and theater artists want to start connecting with schools, but they also haven't either had the educational experience yet. So it would be great for them to kind of start on that journey for themselves as well. So there's that. Challenging assumptions, we kind of talked about that a little bit. And then there's casting. I heard this number, and it is aspirational. that if you have a character that is, you're doing a play and you need a black character. I'm going to be directing a play for the University of Utah called The Book Play. I have to have a black female in that show for that show to work. The department only has 2. So I said, why is this show on this season? Because what if they don't want it, like, what if they get to do a show at the Halo and they're getting paid? Why would they want to do the, like, they might not want to do the show. They might not want to play this character. We're going to be tokenizing them because they have no choice if I cast them, right? So I ended up having a conversation with each of those women personally, and we found a third one to audition. But if you have a character, the idea is that 20% of the people who are auditioning should be of that ethnicity, of that race, of identifying with that, should be deaf, whatever that character is, should be neurodiverse, should be in a wheelchair, whatever those things are, that 20% of the people, again, that is an aspirational number. Yes.
I'm hearing what you're saying, that it's an aspirational number. Where do we come at that from a pragmatic perspective of, like, sometimes then we can't have a play with boys in it. Because we don't have 20% of our people auditioning who are boys. Do you know what I mean? Like, what should we be doing as high school teachers who want to present material that represents BIPOC students, we're close, but we don't know if we necessarily have that percentage. Like, where do you feel like is a good starting point for us?
So,
in referencing that.
yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I would say, a couple options. You don't have the voice, or you're going to have to cast all the boys that come, regardless, and just kind of shift them around. First, you need to be having those conversations. It should be transparent to everyone. I mean, they know it, but sometimes the people in charge aren't naming what this is, right? This is where we're at this point in our program, and we're trying to build, but this is where we're at right now.